Good morning, everyone. In today's video, we will be taking a closer look at the upcoming weather pattern. We have several opportunities for snowfall on the horizon, including one that is just a few days away. This first system appears to be a minor to moderate snow event, but it is noteworthy for tracking a little farther south than we typically see. We will discuss that storm, as well as the others that are lining up in what continues to be a persistently cold pattern. And really, the main theme for today is that the forecast models have become less confident about the warming trend we were expecting around the middle of the month. We will talk more about that a bit later. For now, let's go ahead and examine the model guidance. I believe we will start by taking a look at the European model this morning. As we look ahead to tomorrow afternoon, there is not a great deal of activity. There is not much happening across the country at the moment, which is why we are jumping straight into the forecast. By tomorrow afternoon, however, we are going to see things begin to change. Now, I seem to have a very small marker on the screen, so let me just fix that. There we are. It still seems a little smaller than usual. Let's try this one. Perfect. That is much better. So, we have this northern jet stream, which is pulling in the cold air. Meanwhile, the southern jet stream is responsible for infusing moisture into the entire pattern. And because of this setup, we will be watching some interesting areas for potential snowfall. This particular model shows the more southern track for the storm. However, there is a chance, according to other models, that this system could move a bit farther north into the mid-Atlantic and the northeast. We will consider both possibilities today. We are going to carefully go over all the details. Now, before we watch this storm take shape, I would like to invite you to join our Discord server. We have the QR code right here on the screen, and you can also find links in the description and the pinned comment down below. It is a very active and friendly community where we have already been discussing this weather system. We also have a contest running for this storm where you can pick the town that you believe will receive the most snowfall. And we even announced today that we are going to be holding a winter-long contest. Each time we have one of these individual storm contests, we will be keeping a running tally of your totals. At the end of the winter season, I am not yet sure what the prizes will be, but I can assure you they will be much larger than for our typical contests. Ultimately, though, it is all about the bragging rights. You know, it is a wonderful opportunity to get your predictions in. It is very, very enjoyable. You can pick the towns, and we will be doing this all winter long. I also have plans to do a severe weather contest for the entirety of 2026 as well. So please, join in on the fun. It is a wonderful weather community on Discord. We now have 750 members, which is an increase of about 500 just since November. So it is growing incredibly fast. I encourage you to be a part of it. I am very active in there myself, and I would love to talk with all of you. Now, let's continue our discussion about this storm. As we move forward into the overnight hours on the European model, we can see that northern Tennessee, southern Kentucky, Virginia, southern West Virginia, and northern North Carolina could all begin to see snowfall as early as 4 o'clock in the morning this Friday. As we continue to move this forward, you will notice the snow remains light to moderate. This is not a powerful, heavy-hitting snowstorm by any means, but it is a minor to moderate snow system for these areas farther to the south. If this were happening in the Midwest or the far Northeast, it would not be especially notable, but given its location, this is certainly worth our attention. And we can see that as we approach 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday. Some snowfall could even reach my own corner of the world here in southeastern Virginia. Northern North Carolina is also in the mix, and a good portion of central Virginia could see some light to moderate snowfall that would likely stick to the ground. And of course, southern West Virginia remains one of the key areas we are watching. The European model is one of the forecasts that takes this system farther to the north. It shows the storm moving up the coast a bit, and we begin to see snowfall for Washington, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, southern Pennsylvania, and even southern New Jersey. So, many of the areas that were missed by our previous snow systems might receive a little bit from this one. And again, this is just a few days from now. This is not a long-range or even medium-range forecast at this point. The low-pressure system does develop, and I am curious, if we could get just a slight westward trend with this storm, all of a sudden you would be looking at a more moderate snow system for some of these areas. The issue is that the storm is just a little too far suppressed to the south, and when we look at the jet stream, we can see the real problem. The flow is very flat, and it is not lifting up the coast at all. So, it would take a significant change to pull this system any farther to the west or north. However, it is still possible. If such a change is going to happen, I would expect it to begin showing up on the models within the next 24 hours. So, we will see what happens by tomorrow. The good news for those of you who may not get snowfall with that one is that we have another system that appears to be forming for the weekend and into the early part of next week. around Monday or Tuesday. So, it will not be a long wait for our next potential snow event. When we look at Saturday afternoon, on the 6th, we can see the Cascades, the Rockies, and even up here into Western Canada are all experiencing some moderate to heavy snowfall. We also have a clipper system, with its low-pressure center located over Nebraska and Kansas. And we do have some snowfall to the north of that system as well. It is important to remember that the jet stream is still dipping down into the eastern United States at this point. That is a very critical factor here. We are seeing some upper Midwest snowfall, some of it quite heavy, for the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. What appears to be happening with this particular storm is that we have one piece of energy up here to the north, and we also have a southern piece of energy where that southern stream is moving in. But we can see there is a little bit of separation between that northern jet and the southern jet right here, and this is still 105 hours out, on Sunday the 7th. There is certainly time for these two pieces to come together a little more cohesively. Of course, even this scenario does result in a snow system for some of these areas, but it has the potential to become even larger. It could also become smaller, of course, but I'm just trying to give you a complete picture of the possibilities we are tracking for this setup. As we continue on toward Monday, what we see is that this low-pressure system is simply too far to the south compared to where the cold air is, which is up here to the north. We do not really get a connection between the two, but please stay tuned, because we are going to look at the GFS model next, where we do see this one connect. So, you will get to see what that particular scenario might look like in just a moment. As we reach Monday, it is quite clear we are in a very positive Pacific North American pattern, which is a pattern with warmer air out west, and all of that Arctic air is still pouring into the east by the 8th of the month. So, this is a rather extended period of cold air that we are dealing with. And happening somewhat under the radar, I wanted to make you aware of a couple of other things. I will not discuss it in detail here, but we will likely talk about it in our Discord server, and perhaps in future videos. One factor is the Madden-Julian Oscillation, or MJO. For those of you who follow these teleconnections, that one is becoming extremely favorable as we move into Phase 8. If you are not familiar with it, please do not worry. It basically means that conditions are favorable for continued cold weather and opportunities for snowfall. That is the direction the MJO is heading, and that is a very significant factor. Another thing is, we talked earlier in November, around mid-November, about a sudden stratospheric warming event. This type of event can cause the polar vortex to split up and head farther south, and we are reaping the rewards of that right now. There is typically a 1 or 2 week lag time for its effects to be felt. Now, we are seeing the models begin to suggest that we are about to see another one of these sudden stratospheric warming events. And if that does occur, it could be game on for late December into mid-January. We would essentially be getting a second round of this very cold pattern. It does look like we are shaping up to see something like that develop, which just continues to show promising signs for the short, medium, and long range for all of you who enjoy the cold and snow. I just wanted to provide you with an update on all of that. Again, we will take a deeper dive into that information in the Discord server. Looking at Tuesday here, on the 9th, we see another small clipper system. It is a very quick-moving storm that travels through the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley. We still have a ridge of high pressure in the west and a trough of low pressure in the east. That system does eventually bring some snowfall to the mid-Atlantic and the northeast, mostly light, but perhaps moderate in some areas. We can already see the next clipper system beginning to take shape, and we have talked about this before, but with clipper systems, the main theme is that you often get a lot of them. They are quick-moving, and they typically produce lighter snowfall amounts. But when you see 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of them in a row, the accumulation can certainly begin to add up. Also, they tend to affect areas that are much colder, so they impact areas where the snow does not melt as quickly. This means the snow can sometimes stack on top of what has already fallen. And we are seeing another one of these systems already developing by the 9th and 10th of the month. We see that one move down into the Midwest and the Great Lakes, and then it impacts the Northeast, as perhaps a moderate to heavy snow system. Time will tell on that one. We then see a recycling of the cold air, with warm conditions in the west, and a trough in the east. This brings us to the 12th, which is a Friday. Now, if you watched yesterday's video, you will know this model did not look like this for the 12th just yesterday. It was showing very cold conditions in the west, and warmth in the east. But we have seen this model really back away from that idea and reinforce the notion that we are going to see this cold pattern continue for a while longer in the east. The Midwest and Great Lakes are seeing another clipper system moving through around the 13th, which is a Saturday. We then see that system move into the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast with some light to moderate snowfall for what would be about the third time. As we keep going, the pattern of cold in the east and warm in the west remains pretty much through the entire model run. We do see things become a little more neutral toward the very end, which is the 18th of the month. So, this is very far out in the forecast, and we must view it with a great deal of caution. But you can see the jet stream does become a lot flatter, where the flow is mostly straight from west to east. There's a little bit of a snow system for the mid-Atlantic and the northeast here, and if we are in a flat jet stream pattern for this time of year, especially considering the amount of Arctic air that we have over North America, it does not necessarily mean that it will be a warmer time period at all. In fact, it will most likely be colder for these northern areas, and that is why we are getting mid-Atlantic and northeast snowfall despite there being no significant trough in the east. Now, the GFS model is going to be a little bit different, so let's watch how it plays out. We get snowstorm number 1, which it places farther to the south. We see more of western North Carolina and southwestern Virginia receiving snowfall initially around 4 o'clock in the morning on Friday. And then we see more of northern North Carolina and even southeastern Virginia getting moderate snowfall by 10 o'clock in the morning. Then, we see this particular storm remain as a snow event for those southern areas, without really tracking up the coast. So, a very different look. For our friends in Northern Virginia, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Delaware, Southern Pennsylvania, and Southern New Jersey, this particular scenario indicates very little to no accumulation. We are discussing a system that is only about 2 days away from arriving. It is quite remarkable that the outcome could be either a few inches of snowfall or practically nothing for some of these communities, especially being so very close to the event. So, please stay tuned for further updates. For updates on this particular storm, as I mentioned on my Discord channel, I truly feel this is an all-or-nothing scenario for many people, where it will either be a significant surprise or it will produce almost nothing. It is going to be a very tricky storm to forecast, so it would be wise to manage expectations, as this forecast is certainly subject to change. It has been quite inconsistent in the forecast models, but it is certainly an exciting event to track. Now, looking ahead to Sunday, the 7th, and into Monday the 8th, take a look at this. We see another snow system developing for similar areas where the European model placed the low-pressure center in roughly the same spot. It just did not have quite as much cold air in the mid-Atlantic. In this new forecast, however, we get both the cold air and the storm. This could lead to another snow system reaching remarkably far to the south. Please take this with a grain of salt for South Carolina and North Carolina by Monday afternoon on the 4th. It would have to be an exceptionally cold day on Monday for the high temperatures to remain low enough for snowfall in these very southerly locations. Of course, time will tell. I believe our very best chance for snowfall along the east coast is if the entire storm tracks farther northward, including more of the mid-Atlantic. But as you know, nothing in the weather truly surprises me these days. Therefore, we must consider it a possibility. The cold air generally remains in the east. We have Clipper System number 1, and then Clipper System number 2. This second one appears to be a more significant event for the mid-Atlantic and northeast, at least for a Clipper system. Then, according to this GFS model, we do experience a warm-up around the 13th and 14th. Following that, we see some colder air beginning to move back in. But notice this development. We still have this southern stream infusing moisture, while the northern jet stream brings in some stronger systems. The result is a return to a snowfall pattern for the northern plains, the upper Midwest, and the Great Lakes. We see a very significant storm here toward the end of this model run for the plains, Midwest, and Great Lakes. Then, the cold air does return to the east for the 17th, 18th, and 19th. So, as you can see, there are some differences between the models. The GFS model shows a brief break in the cold, warming us up for a few days. The European model, however, suggests the cold will not end past the midway point of the month. It indicates the cold pattern will persist. The GFS model, again, shows a bit of a break, but both models are forecasting a very active period with snow systems. There will be multiple events for us to track. So, the outlook is certainly optimistic for those of you who appreciate cold and snowy weather across the country. As for total precipitation, this southern jet stream, believe it or not, despite all the snow we are seeing, is suppressed very far to the south. We do see some activity moving across the northern portions of the United States, including some of those Clipper systems. This is the general storm track we are observing quite often. So, we have some northern stream activity and a great deal of southern stream activity. The outcome will depend heavily on how these two streams come together, or if they remain separate, as we have discussed throughout this forecast. Now, looking at the precipitation anomalies, we do see above-average precipitation for the northwest, below average in the southwest, below average for the south-central region, and below average for a large portion of the east. This is despite having what are likely above-average chances for snowfall, as we are not anticipating any significant rainstorms in between these snow events. We are not expecting those large, soaking rainfall events, nor are we expecting huge snowstorms. You have to remember that most snowfall occurs at a 10-to-1 ratio. This means 1 inch of liquid precipitation is equivalent to 10 inches of snowfall. During this 15-day period, you would typically see more than an inch of precipitation on average. So, if all of that were to fall as snow, you might need to receive 20 inches of snowfall just to meet your average precipitation. In a cold pattern such as this one, it is possible, but we are just not seeing that level of snowfall in the forecast. I would say, however, that the chance for snowfall is above average. It is simply that the overall precipitation, the total moisture, is not meeting the average standard for many of these areas. That is what makes this a rather unusual pattern. We are forecasting a good amount of snow within a below-average precipitation pattern. We do see on this European model that some of the lower Cascades and Sierra Nevadas are showing below-average snowfall, but the northern Cascades into the Rockies appear to be near average, or perhaps even a little above average in the northernmost areas. For the northern plains, Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast, this is all looking quite promising and very active. This is especially true for these farther south locations. In many years, these areas do not even see a threat of snowfall until we move into late December or January. So, all of this is something of a bonus compared to what we are accustomed to. I have seen a number of folks who were disappointed by yesterday's snowstorm, or perhaps this upcoming one is not heading their way. But, friends, we must keep things in perspective. It is currently December 3rd. You understand what I mean. In many very active winters, we do not see any snowfall at all yet, or even within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So, I believe everyone needs to take a deep breath. This is all an extra benefit compared to what is considered standard, and as a forecaster, this is truly exciting to watch. There will be lots of active lake effect snowfall in here as well. This means high accumulation totals for many of these eastern areas. The GFS model is a little farther south with its snowfall forecast. As you can see, there is a bit more separation where the Mid-Atlantic region seems to be missed entirely. I would genuinely dislike seeing this happen for you all in the heart of the Mid-Atlantic, because last winter was very similar, time and time again. The deep south areas saw a great deal of snowfall, and the interior northeast saw significant snowfall, but you folks were caught in between, missing out on both scenarios. The storms were either too far south of you, or that rain-snow line was to your north, with no real middle ground. I am hoping this winter will be different. Now, for the temperatures, looking again at the European model, the first Arctic blast is coming to an end. The second Arctic blast arrives with a vengeance for later this week, around the 4th, 5th, and 6th. Then, a third Arctic blast moves in and appears even more intense than the two before it, for the 8th, 9th, and 10th. After that, we may get a 5th one, or perhaps a 4th or 5th, then a 5th or 6th, and possibly another one towards the end of the forecast period. So, we are seeing numerous surges from this very large trough that is bringing Arctic air with it repeatedly, with very few, if any, breaks in between for warmer air. It does look a little milder here towards the end of the model run, but it is still quite chilly. And frankly, this is 360 hours out, so you have to take this part of the forecast with a grain of salt. Now for the GFS model. We are going to see numerous Arctic blasts arriving over the coming week or two. However, once we reach the 12th, we see that warmer air shifts eastward, and the cold shifts toward the west. But notice at the end of the model run, we do return to a warm in the west, cold in the east pattern relatively quickly, in under a week. So, that warm period seems to last mostly through the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th, and then perhaps part of the 17th. We are then back into the colder air for the country as a whole. Both of these models are looking more optimistic than yesterday, in my opinion, for continued cold temperatures. And again, there are factors at play that go beyond even what these models are showing things for after the 15th and after the 20th, like the sudden stratospheric warming event and the MJO index. All of those long-range indicators are lining up to give us some confidence in the medium to long-range forecast that we will see more cold than warmth overall in most of the central and eastern United States. With that pattern, we will likely have many opportunities for snowfall. So, I am feeling very optimistic today, folks, for all of you who enjoy cold and snowy weather. Here's the 7th through the 17th forecast on the European ensemble model. This gives you some bigger picture guidance. These ensemble models take 20 to 30 different members, which are slightly different versions of the model, and calculate the mean average of all of them to give us a result. What we are seeing on the screen here is that the majority of these models do agree, the vast majority, on a pattern of warmer in the west and colder in the east, continuing for the 7th through 17th timeframe overall. The GFS ensemble model, which works in the same way, is very, very similar for the 9th through the 19th in this instance. So again, everything looks quite favorable, my friends. With all of that being said, please be sure to subscribe, as we upload a new forecast every single day. You can even hit the bell icon to receive daily notifications when we upload, so you never miss a forecast. Please be sure to like the video if you found it helpful. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next update.